I'm Adam, and this is a video about our 2011 BMW 328i. In today's video, we're going to do a little walk around of the outside of this BMW, and then I'm going to take you guys inside and show you a couple of features that make this a truly cool car. We'll start here with a walk around of the entire outside. It does have the classic BMW double kidney grille, so this is a style that we've been seeing in BMWs for years, and they still continue this today. As you can see, this BMW is wrapped in white, and it does feature the 17-inch wheels. This BMW is powered by a 3-liter 6-cylinder engine, producing 230 horsepower, and you're still achieving about 18 miles to the gallon in the city and 28 miles to the gallon on the highway. You'll be pleased to know that this BMW does feature a sunroof as well. Alright, now moving here to the interior, I'm going to start by showing you guys a bit of a layout of the dashboard, that way you can get a feel and kind of see what we're going to be working with. Now that you guys have had a chance to see the layout of the dashboard and everything, I'm going to start here with the steering wheel. As you'll notice, we do have steering wheel controls on the left and right side. On the left, we have our volume and our phone and our hands-free button. And then on the right side, we have some controls to change our air conditioning recirculation. And then we can also change our radio preset on the right side as well. One of the nicer things about this 328i is that it also does feature a heated steering wheel. The button is not in a great place to see, but I did find it by accident, and once you know it's there, it's a great feature to have in the winter time. Moving up from the steering wheel, you will see that we do have this classic double gauge needle design. On the left, we have the speedometer and our gas gauge, and on the right, we have our tachometer, and then we also have this little MPG gauge down at the bottom. So an interesting thing about this gauge is that if you're sitting at a stoplight or something, it will say 0, but when you start to accelerate, the gauge will move and give you a real-time indication of what kind of miles per gallon you're getting. This gauge does move very quickly, and it also moves backwards, which is kind of an interesting thing, but nonetheless, it's a cool little feature that lets you know how good you're doing on driving. As well, you will notice that we have this little driver information screen here between the gauges. This gives us some basic information like miles until empty and our trip and things like that. And that is controlled by these little 2 buttons on the turn signal stalk. This one button on the end, the BC button, will switch you through some of the menu items, and then the up and down scroller on the stalk will get you through your options if you want to check the status of the car, your tire pressure, things like that. Moving over from there, you will see that we do have automatic headlights, which is always a nice feature. It is to be expected on a luxury brand, and we also have fog lights as well. Moving over to the right of the steering wheel on the wiper stalk, I do want to point out the fact that this 2011 328i does have automatic wipers. That's not something that you necessarily see a lot in cars that are 2011 model year, but this is a luxury make, and it's a great feature to have. Moving over a little bit from there, you will see that this is a push button start, but since this is a 2011, as I mentioned, this vehicle actually does not have just keyless start. So you actually do still have to take your key fob and insert it into this little cubby here. That way the car knows that you've got the key with you. This is a precursor to the push button start that we see today, but nonetheless, this was an innovative design when it first came out. Now we'll move on here to the center console, and we'll start with these vents in the middle here. I do want to point out something that BMW has been doing for years, and I think this is a great idea. You have this little roller dial here between the vents that goes from cold to hot, and that lets you determine what air you want to allow out of those vents. So if you like to only have cold air coming out of those vents, you can just leave the little dial on cold, and then if you have the AC on, it will direct them out the vents, but if you have the heat on, it will avoid those vents for you automatically. I love this feature, and I think that it's really nice to have, because who likes hot air blowing on their face? Not many people. Additionally, you will see that we have the door lock unlock button here in the middle above that dial, and then we also have the traction control button and the hazards. Moving down from there to the radio and the AC controls, you will see that the radio does look a little bit dated in my opinion. Again, this is a 2011, and if you look at a lot of cars from that year, we're not seeing really great infotainment systems yet. It has this basic kind of this slender rectangular screen with these red letters and the red numbers. That's actually a nice thing, because at night red is very dim, so it's very easy to see, but it's not super bright and distracting. Moving down from there, of course, we do have the dual zone auto climate control, as well as having heated seats, which is always a nice feature, especially when you pair that with the heated steering wheel. Continuing on down from there, the center console and everything on this car is pretty basic. We have a little cubby here in front of the shifter, and then of course we have our gear selector. This does feature a Triptronic transmission, which means you can put it down into drive, and then if you pull it over to the left, it will actually go into automatic sport mode. And if you're someone who is a driving enthusiast and you like that manual feel, you can also choose to shift this gear selector forward and backwards, so you can go with a kind of a manual automatic transmission. Continuing down from there, we have another small cubby. One thing that you will not notice in this car is that you don't have any cup holders here in the center console. That is kind of a common trait with German vehicles. They never were really big on amenities here. It was more based on the driver experience. So you'll just have this cubby and your e-brake, and then as well you have a small center console. It does feature a USB port and an aux cord, as well as a 12-volt power outlet, which is nice to stay connected. But it's a pretty small center console, but this is a pretty small car. Moving on from the center console, if you look at the dashboard in front of the passenger seat, you will notice these two little spots where you can push it in. Those are both cup holders. So this is kind of nice that they stay recessed and you don't necessarily have them out and exposed when you don't need them, but you do have access to them. The one on the far right side, I wouldn't necessarily suggest you put a drink in there if you're driving, just because it's all the way across the car and that might be a little dangerous to reach for that. But nonetheless, it does give you two cup holders, even though it doesn't keep them in the center console like you're used to seeing. Take a look around at the seats in this car as well. It does come with these nice leather seats. They're kind of in this tan or camel color, if you will. And then in the back seats, we have the same thing. We have the leather, and we do also have a couple little air vents, which is nice. They also feature that temperature roller dial, so if you don't want hot air blowing on your face from back there, you still have the option. As I mentioned, this 328i does have a sunroof, so if you look up from your center rear view mirror, you will see that you have the controls there. All right, that wraps things up for today with this 2011 BMW 328i. I know this was a bit of a short video, but I hope you guys got a little bit of better feel for what this car has to offer. Check back on Thursday when Brenna is going to take this vehicle for a test drive and give you her first impressions. If you do have any questions or you'd like to see this BMW in person, you can stop by and visit us here at 1820 Vandalia Street in Collinsville. That's Jack Schmitt Ford. Or you can stop by and visit us online at jackschmittford.com.